Have you ever stopped to wonder why we're so obsessed with forcing our messy, frankly, chaotic real world into perfectly neat little mathematical boxes? It's kind of wild, right? Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into part 6 of our masterclass, and we're tracking the sweeping historical arch that somehow connects medieval monks to modern computer code.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for today. First, the drive to formalize. Then, we'll look at the medieval Padisha system, SGML and structured text, smart contracts and dry code, and finally, the limits of literalism. We're going to connect some seemingly totally disparate eras right here.
So, what exactly is formalization? Well, as you can see, it's the process of taking messy, unwritten, highly contextual human reality and codifying it into structured, explicit, rule-bound frameworks. Basically, we take the deeply ambiguous and we try with all our might to make it absolute. Section 1. The drive to formalize. Seriously, why do we do this? Why is society relentlessly trying to trap fluid human behavior in rigid rules?
Just look at the leaps we're making today. We're tracing this all the way from the physical quantization of legal books back in the 1200s to the digital encoding of documents in 1981 and right down to the formalization of modern commerce in 1994. It's the exact same human impulse, just evolving across completely different mediums.
Now you might be thinking, well, that just sounds like adding a bunch of bureaucracy. But formalization isn't just about red tape. Historically, it serves as an absolutely crucial instrument of democratization. By writing things down in a structured way, it curbs arbitrary authority, it secures public transparency, and it creates a predictable baseline that everybody can access. It means the rules belong to the public, not just the elite.
Moving on to Section 2, the medieval Petchia system. To really see formalization in action, let's jump way back to the 13th century. Early European universities were suddenly facing an explosive demand for highly complex, thousands of pages long legal textbooks. And remember, there was no printing press. Every single letter had to be written by hand. They desperately needed a massive structural revolution.
To bypass that massive bottleneck, the university invented a highly regulated workflow. First, a professor authorizes an error-free master exemplar. Then, instead of one poor monk copying it cover to cover for an entire year, they shatter the text into standardized chunks called pekaseia, or pieces. These chunks were then rented out simultaneously, so dozens of scribes could copy the exact same book in parallel.
And yes, as our source material perfectly describes it, this was essentially medieval peer-to-peer file sharing. It's brilliant, really. By breaking a massive, fluid legal code into tiny, rigidly structured bite-sized pieces, they dramatically scaled up the speed and volume of text reproduction across Europe, literally hundreds of years before the Industrial Revolution.
All right, Section 3, SGML and structured text. Let's fast forward a bit to 1981. We're shifting from the physical quantization of parchment to the digital encoding of human meaning. In 1981, a computer scientist, and actually a former lawyer, named Charles Goldfarb, introduced SGML. This was a massive, massive paradigm shift. Instead of just telling a computer to display letters on a screen, Goldfarb was trying to make machines actually understand the structural intent of human text.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the stark boundary Goldfarb established. He completely isolated a document's true semantic meaning from its physical presentation. Descriptive markup tells the computer what a piece of text fundamentally is, like declaring, hey, this is a title. Procedural markup, on the other hand, just gives a visual command, like make this text bold. By splitting these two, we turned ambiguous human language into a highly structured, machine-readable format.
Which brings us to Section 4, Smart Contracts and Dry Code. We're swooping from the 1980s directly into exploring what happens when structured digital text gets applied to legal agreements in actual commerce.
And that lands us in 1994. This is the exact year cryptographer Nick Szabo took this entire concept of formalization and pushed it to its absolute limits, birthing the concept of the smart contract.
Szabo defined a smart contract as a computerized transaction protocol that executes the terms of a contract. His revolutionary goal? To take the incredibly messy, forgiving ambiguity of human commerce and translate it directly into self-enforcing, programmed performance. No humans needed.
To explain this, Szabo used a brilliantly simple illustration, the humble vending machine. It's the ultimate primitive smart contract. Think about it. You don't negotiate with a vending machine. You don't try to explain that you're having a bad day and really need a snack. You simply meet the programmed condition, putting your money in, and the protocol deterministically dispenses the soda. Autonomous enforcement, completely eliminating the human intermediary.
To scale that mechanical vending machine up into a global digital network, Szabo outlined 4 primary design objectives. He wanted transparency, verification, privacy, and, absolutely crucially, enforceability. By embedding enforceability straight into the protocol, you minimize the reliance on trusted third parties and mathematically reduce the potential for fraud. So how does this actually execute? Well, it's a brisk, deterministic 3-step dance. Step 1. Encode a transparent, unilateral offer on the network. Step 2. A user transfers an asset to meet the exact condition. Step 3. The contract autonomously releases the agreed-upon asset. It's immediate, it's unalterable, and it executes perfectly without a single human lifting a finger.
But as you might guess, this creates a massive philosophical clash. Traditional human law is what we call wet code. It's inherently ambiguous, highly relational, and often very forgiving, mostly because humans are forgiving. But dry code? That is the language of machines. It operates strictly on Boolean logic. It's binary, it's deterministic, and it is completely cold. If you're 5 minutes late, dry code doesn't care about traffic. The contract just fails.
Section 5. The limits of literalism. So what happens when these pure, absolutely formalist systems crash headfirst into our very messy, unpredictable human reality?
Well, history repeatedly shows us that extreme systemic rigidity almost always triggers a substantive backlash. Take Canadian securities law, for example. Courts there have actively rejected strict technical formalism. Why? Because clever actors will always find loopholes in rigid code to exploit everyday people. So the courts step in, prioritizing the actual economic substance to protect the public, totally overriding whatever private technical labels the parties tried to slap on their agreement.
So the crucial point here is this concept of unfaithful agency. You simply cannot treat a text, or a piece of code for that matter, as a perfectly formal, isolated object. It's a human speech act. Actually, scratch that. It's an ongoing human relationship. You just cannot write a line of code for every single unforeseen, weird human nuance without risking absurd or even totally cruel outcomes in the real world. To summarize this core tension, yes, formal rules are wonderful. They create an essential, predictable baseline that society and computers desperately need to function. But substantive human interpretation is completely irreplaceable. To navigate the inevitable friction of the real world, our systems require a productive dialectic between rigid rules and human grace.
I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to chew on. As we rush headfirst into the era of algorithmic governance and computerized smart contracts, if rigid, deterministic code truly becomes law, and we completely remove the human author from the loop, who takes responsibility when that code inevitably breaks reality? Think about that the next time you hear someone say code is law. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time as we continue unpacking the hidden systems running our world.